surrendered to U.S. authorities today. Marc Emery is charged in connection with a business he ran, exporting marijuana seeds to customers in the U.S. And right now, we have his wife with us from Vancouver. Jodie Emery can tell us more about why her husband decided to give in and what the decision means for them. I want to thank you for taking the time, Jodie, to talk to us. I know your husband, and I've interviewed him before on this very program. He's been fighting extradition since 2005. Why did he decide today to surrender?
Well, they were seeking to extradite him and have him charged on 3 counts that each had a mandatory minimum of 10 years. So if he had tried to resist extradition, he would have received a 30-year sentence at the minimum and probably upwards towards life. So when his co-accused earlier this year were able to get sentences of probation and no prison time, he was offered a 5-year plea deal, and we decided that it would be better for him to return back to Canada instead of having me have him die in prison many years from now. I would not be able to go on.
That must have been a very emotional conversation. How difficult was it for both of you to come to that decision?
It's been very difficult, and it's absolutely devastating. I represent many women and many people of the millions out there who have lost a loved one in this war on drugs, from people who are being put away in prison for victimless crimes. They're dealing with plants. Marc only sold seeds. And he's a Canadian citizen who remained in Canada at all times. He never went to the United States. So for Canada's police to investigate him and send the information south, and to have the courts here refuse to charge him and have the file given to the Americans, this is an insult to sovereignty. And to make it even worse, a year ago, the American government said that Marc could serve a 5-year term here in Canada, and the Conservative government had to agree with it, and they refused. They refused to protect my husband, a Canadian citizen, and they're sending him to a foreign country. This government does not stand up for Canadians at home. They do not stand up for Canadians abroad, and my husband is just one of many, and I am one of many who are suffering from this. It's pain inflicted upon us by a prohibition that doesn't make any sense. It's failed, and politicians who support prohibition are supporting organized crime. We're keeping this marijuana industry illegal, and it's profiting these gangsters and contributing to violence.
I want to ask you what your husband is facing in the United States. You mentioned the 5 years. What is the situation in jail, in a foreign jail he will be in?
Well, many Canadians, or most Canadians, are put into facilities for foreigners. They do not get the same rights as Americans. So Marc, even as a non-violent first-time offender, could not get into a work camp, and he won't be nearby. He's sent to a facility housing thousands of Central and South Americans and a few Canadians, and they're often on lockdown for 23 hours a day because of the cartel members who are fighting. So I'm terrified for the safety of my husband. I'm absolutely devastated, and Canadians need to be very concerned about this. If an upstanding Canadian citizen who no one has complained about, who paid his taxes to the government on selling seeds, if he can't be protected and he's sent to a foreign country to this horrendous punishment of 5 years away from his loved ones and suffering in this hellhole, it could happen to anybody. And I wish our government would stand up for him, and I sincerely hope Canadians who are outraged about this do something, contact the Justice Minister, because Marc is being held in Canada until the Justice Minister signs the extradition order.
And so even though he's in Canada, you won't be seeing him because you had to say goodbye today in court when he was taken into custody. What went through your head at that point?
It's just a blur, and it's so hard. And he stood up when they said he was ordered for surrender to the United States, and he said, "I love you, Jodie Emery. Plant the seeds of freedom. Overgrow the government," because that's his mantra. And that's why the DEA went after him. He's a political prisoner. I have this statement from the DEA saying Marc Emery's arrest as a leader of a marijuana legalization group is a significant blow to the marijuana legalization movement. Hundreds of thousands of his money, his dollars, are spent on legalization groups active in the United States and Canada. Drug legalization lobbyists have one less pot of money to rely on, and they called him the #1 trafficking drug kingpin in Canada that they went after. And we know this is absurd when there's gangsters out there selling synthetic drugs and dangerous goods.
Jodie Emery, I know you plan to have your husband, or at least to apply to have him spend his time in Canada in prison. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and free Marc Emery.
I want to take you to Mexico now, where media reports